Welcome, everybody. Tonight we're working on Unit 1. This is the first week of instruction for our Introduction to AI class. Our materials for this class are based on the AI for Workforce initiative from Intel Corporation. They've generated all the content slides, and we are utilizing them here in class. All right, I'm going to kind of propel us forward. There's our disclaimer. This is kind of our agenda for the evening. What I will say in advance is I'm very realistic in thinking that there's 107 slides in this slideshow, that we're not going to make it all the way through all of them here tonight, but we're going to make a wholehearted attempt to get as far as we can. The remainder of the content will be published separately, and then you'll consume that during our week off for MLK Day. I'm turning on the AI companion right now, which I forgot to do, so that's taking notes for us. But these are our topics. So we're going to talk about the course overall. We're going to talk about what actually is AI, right? A lot of people throw the term around and really don't understand at all what they're talking about. We're also going to look at what automation is and how that differs from AI, because a lot of what we think of as AI sometimes is just automation. How integrated chips and technology power AI, and then we'll also look at AI applications and why they exist in the first place. Some of this is going to be kind of verging on like historical, some of it is informational, and all along the way, by the way, I'm encouraging you guys to interact with me. So if you guys have questions or you want to throw in comments, please do so, right? You can throw them in the chat window. I'll try to monitor it, or you can just unmute and say something if you wish. Just remember that I do try to publish this on YouTube, so be polite in your comments. If your cameras are on, your faces might show up in the video, just putting it out there. All right, so why are we here? Basically, I mean, folks, these are in-demand skills, right? It's kind of a naive assumption to think that that people that get into this area are just good with ChatGPT and they got a job because they're good with ChatGPT, right? And in some cases that's true, but a lot of the people who work in this space are super highly trained individuals that have been in IT for a really long time and know a lot about a lot of different things. And what I'm hoping to do here is to get you started on that process. The skills are high in demand. As I mentioned during the previous little segment, that employers are already starting to prefer candidates that have experience with these types of tools. They don't want to have to teach you how to use them. They are expecting it as you're coming in, right? So knowing even the lingo is a big thing, right? And there's a lot of terminology we're going to learn, a lot of concepts we're going to learn, and we're going to understand how to make differentiations in a lot of different little detailed kind of things. All right. So hypothetically, these are the skills you're going to gain while you study all these AI courses, like the words, the programming, how we work on projects, how you think about things, also the ethics and the impact on society. It is not small, right? We already have lots of ethical concerns related to this, and very logically so. We'll have a combination of quizzes and assignments. We'll talk about a lot of different things for sure as we move along, but ultimately we're here kind of to, at least for now, answer this question. This is a big question, right? And all right, let's kind of break it down into like these bullet points, and this is where we're going to kind of venture first. So we're going to look at what is AI, and once again, and I'm doing this kind of in a goofy fashion, but there are notes on some of these slides. So you notice how like, this is just, where the image comes from, but sometimes there's notes and links that are very pertinent. So be mindful of the notes sections of the slides. So we're talking about what AI is, why AI is, where it came from, because we kind of have this naive assumption it just happened, and that's totally not the case. And we'll look at what impact it's made already on society. So there's this guy, John McCarthy, and you guys will figure out who he is pretty soon. And what he says about AI is that it's the science and engineering of making intelligent machines. All right, pretty deep statement and goofy little graphic there. We have a robot hand and a human hand, right? Kind of shaking hands. But let me ponder this question for you. Are machines intelligent? Sometimes I wonder if my cat is intelligent, you know, or my dog is intelligent, or heck, my children are intelligent. I'm trying to make light of it, but I'm really asking you a sincere question that I want you to think about. Can machines be intelligent? Yeah, so you could a head shaking there, maybe I don't know there. Yeah, that's a deep question. All right, so AI, this is kind of weird, right? So, um, artificial intelligence aspects are now being added to all sorts of software. When they put this slide together a few years ago, um, Photoshop, and I don't know how many of you use that product. I do happen to use it. Started adding all these AI features to it. So, like for example, in the old days, I'd get an image on a computer screen and I would like want to edit it for an e-commerce website, and I'd sit there and I'd trace around it and remove the background and brighten it and drop shadows in. And I was like, manual graphics work. And then they put these AI tools in Photoshop. It's like, get rid of the background, add a drop shadow, put a border on it, brighten it, sharpen it. Okay, great, thanks. I did it in 2 minutes as opposed to a half hour on each image. Wow, right? And that kind of thing is happening in a lot of our software products right now. And a lot of us, myself included, at times, I'm like, oh, great, Excel's got Copilot built in. I'm not really sure what to do with it, but it's great. It's there, right? But what I'm hoping is that you guys start to venture into these areas where you do start trying those tools and seeing how they can speed up your workflow. AI, as it indicates their second bullet, it automates repetitive learning also. Um, so this is kind of weird, right? Now I don't need AI to tell me this, but if I'm going to get on the highway in the morning and drive to Gateway and I leave at like 7 in the morning, I can expect a lot of traffic, right? And if I leave at 10 a.m., the traffic's all gone, right? Because I know there's a rush hour. But that is generated by the virtue of the fact that a lot of companies open at certain hours and people have to travel to work and they have to travel the highways and they collect data from the highways and they can figure out how and when the freeways will be blocked with traffic. And so we can take data, feed it into computer programs, and make predictions. And is that really AI? So I'm asking you these deep questions. I'm going to have you start to ponder them in the back of your head. All right. So why artificial intelligence? It says it adapts through learning from the user experience. So, for example, they have chatbots and personal assistants like Alexa or Siri or the Google Assistant. And I don't know like how many of you do that, but I mean, I'm guilty of it. I mean, and I don't have Siri on my phone, but like this is really funny. I went to a conference once a number of years ago, and one of the keynote speakers said, "Hey Siri," and everybody's phone was like beep 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 beep. you know, yeah, it was hilarious, right? But have you guys ever done that with your phone? Is anybody's phone like turned on to do that? Like, hey Google, like mine's not set up to do that anymore. Probably smart, but I would be in class and I would mistakenly utter "Hey Google," and all of a sudden Google's like responding and to me. But um, are those really AIs driving those? Sure seems like it, right? Like, hey Siri, what's the weather going to be tomorrow? Do you think Siri is really smart enough to know what the weather's going to be tomorrow? Or does it go out to the internet and look it up for you because you're way too lazy to move your mouse across the screen and click a couple things to get to it? Right? It's kind of an interesting thought, right? But what really denotes intelligence as opposed to whatever? The other example they're using here is like adding filters, like on Snapchat or Instagram or whatever, right? You take a photograph, add a filter to it, you take like the angle shot so you look good, that kind of thing. And pop a couple filters on it, make you look 10 pounds lighter. Um, is that AI? Or is that just really fancy software? So I'm asking you these questions. I want you to think about it. Right? I'm not giving you the answer necessarily. Um, all right, artificial intelligence, when it's actually artificial intelligence, actually uses or is used by companies to do tasks, maybe to benefit you and maybe sometimes not to benefit you. They use the example here where like certain, like, let's say mortgage lenders, for example, will pre-assess you with artificial intelligence, or you go to apply for a job using Indeed or Monster and you throw a resume at it, and before the company even looks at your resume, they have an AI engine that's already filtered your stuff out, saving them the time and effort of doing the same thing. Could that be bad? Perhaps, right? Um, how about this one? Auto transcriptions saves several person hours by performing transcription in a matter of seconds. All right, example. I can hit the microphone on my phone and send a text message, right? That's very helpful when I'm driving. You know, I will admit I do that all the time. It's like, man, I don't want to type the word understanding right now on my keyboard because I'm driving. So I'm just get my tool to do it for me. Once again, is that AI? Well, that's voice recognition, but is there an intelligence behind it? Now, if I ask a question into the microphone and then it responds to me, you know, and um, I don't know, I'm just do a little example here on my phone. Uh, that wasn't good. Here on my phone means you are using your phone. Yeah, okay. What's the weather going to be tomorrow in Milwaukee, Wisconsin?
Tomorrow's forecast for Milwaukee is 45 degrees and partly sunny.
You tell me, intelligence or not? It's auto transcribing my voice. Here's a better thing. Inside of Zoom, right now I'm running the AI companion, which is listening to my conversation. And when I'm done with this session here tonight, it's going to generate an email message it'll send to me that'll give me a synopsis of what I said, give me the highlights, outline it all. Is that AI? Well, if it's taking what I said and giving me a synopsis, it's changing it, isn't it? Right? It's figuring out what's important. So I'd say yes, that would be AI, right? But just listening to my voice, turning it into text and doing a Google search, I'm going to argue is not, right? And these are the kind of things that we will start looking at. Here's a product, Grammarly, and you know what's kind of interesting is Gateway put me in a pilot group, and I have a Grammarly account right now, and I'll be real frank, I like never use it, but it is really powerful software. And I don't know if they're going to start releasing it to students or whatever, but it's a kind of software like I type something up and then I can throw it into Grammarly and say, can you make this better? Well, you can do that with Chat GPT too, but it'll do things like, oh, maybe you want to restructure your sentence, or maybe you want to use a different verb, or, you know, like there is a little bit, it's kind of like interacting with an English teacher in a way, right? So that's a thing. And they say AI based virtual assistants. Well, I just kind of did that. But what if you had an AI assistant and you were like, oh man, I got to make a spreadsheet for work. And it's like, okay, AI, do the spreadsheet for me so I can just check it out and then I'll just approve it and we'll move along. Right. Um, yeah, Grammarly is a really popular one when it comes to text. But here's kind of an interesting thing, Rick. When you guys are typing an email in Gmail, right, and you put like a person in the to field, and then you go to start typing and it says, "Hi, Joe," and all you have to do is hit tab and it, right, like you go with it, right, or you start typing. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me later. It, you know, types the rest of it for you. Is that intelligence or is that a pattern? It's kind of actually a combination of both. Another thing that you see, and we'll talk about all this stuff as we go multiple times, but like when you go to your email account, and why does it throw stuff into a spam folder? They have some sort of an algorithm that checks that. But once again, is that AI or is that just well written software? You know, I always ask that question. All right. So the term AI was coined by John McCarthy. So that first quote that we saw, he's the guy that came up with the concept of calling it that, right? And then we have this guy, Alan Turing. Now, if you guys had the Python class with me, you guys remember that class, right? And in the Python class, we talked a little bit about computer history. And I took you guys from like the abacus to like the loom and punch cards. Remember all that stuff? And we talked about ENIAC. And then we talked about how Alan Turing, who was a British mathematician scientist, built an electromechanical computer in Britain that was able to finally break the code that the Germans were using with the Enigma machine during World War II. And a lot of people attribute that invention to winning World War II because all of a sudden we could read the encrypted messages of the Nazis, and they were dumb because they ended every one of their transmissions with Heil Hitler, which was enough for us to build the key to break the code. Yeah, so it's a deep story, but there's a movie all about it called The Imitation Game. Highly recommended. You guys should watch it. And it's about this guy, Alan Turing. But Alan Turing, when he was working on all that stuff, came up with this concept of a Turing test. He goes, eventually, we're going to build computers that are so smart that we're not going to be able to tell if we're talking to a computer or a human. And the Turing test is a test that we give a computer to determine if it's a computer or a human. Here's one of the interesting things about AI. When people are building AI these days, they are actually building AI that tests itself so that the output that it gives is convincing enough to not be considered AI. Well, this is kind of a whole algorithm they're writing. So like you ask an AI a question and then it analyzes its own answer and then goes, does that seem like a computer generated or a human generated? Oh, I better revise that a little bit so it sounds more human-like, right? So the goal of the AI is to trick itself into thinking that the AI answer is real, right? And the Turing test is to figure out that it's false. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I've seen plenty already of like fake images, fake videos. Oh my God, it goes on and on. That like, is that real? You don't even know. And people are just doing this, on ChatGPT or whatever, right? Yeah. So the Turing test is a thing, but Alan Turing thought about this concept of the Turing test. I mean, people, this is like 75 years ago already. These people were thinking about this concept and now we're living it. And I think that's really cool, right? That somebody a long time ago thought about this. All right. So here's the lowdown on this guy, John McCarthy, and they call him the father of AI. A lot of really notable advancements in technology that he did. He developed this programming language called Lisp, and this is I forget what time frame it was, probably like late 70s, early 80s, something like that, which was a very advanced programming language for its time, but it did some what we call symbolic computation. He also thought of the concept of artificial intelligence as a term. And he's done a lot of stuff, in the technology area, especially in programming, that put what he did like leaps and bounds ahead of a lot of the stuff that was happening at the time. The Lisp programming language, if you read up on it, is one of those languages that was like object oriented and had all these capabilities that our modern languages have when other languages were not even thinking in that capacity, right? And you guys might not find that interesting at all, but I always like find it very fascinating when you get these people who are super brilliant and come up with ideas that are decades or generations ahead of what's happening, right? And then we end up following their pathway because they were so far, they were so visionary, and John McCarthy is one of those people. Here's a picture of him, right? So if you want to put a face with a name, it looks like kind of a weird guy like me, I guess, but without glasses, right? He says, I don't see that human intelligence is something that humans can ever understand. Yeah. So that's kind of an interesting quote, right? Not everybody's all that smart. Some people are really smart, but a lot of people have to like struggle and make mistakes to figure out how to do stuff, right? Um, but an interesting character nonetheless. Here's a picture of Alan Turing, and once again, he was known for being the code breaker in World War II. The thing I always tell my students is, really interestingly, at one point in World War II, they captured one of the German submarines, a U-2 submarine that had one of the Enigma machine typewriter things in it, the code machine, and they have it on display at the Museum of Science and Industry, both the submarine and the Enigma machine. So if you ever go down there, go see the submarine exhibit and see the result. It's pretty fascinating stuff, and it's right in our backyard. I mean, literally. Um, he was very, very revolutionary in his thinking. The fact that he was able, to break that code. He's on the list of the top 100 most important people of the 20th century. A lot of people don't even know who he is. The unfortunate thing is after the war, um, the government in Britain figured out that he was a homosexual and ostracized him and chemically castrated him and ruined his mind in the process. Right? It's just a travesty when you read the story. Really cool movie. Once again, The Imitation Game. So check that out. But really cool how he got to this concept of the Turing test once again. Um, and the Turing test is a piece that's still used today when we develop AI, by the way. Like I said, where AI tests itself to see if it can convince itself if it's real or not, right? Before it releases it to us, it's for us to think it's real or not. So I think it's really kind of an interesting concept. I think we're at the point where we should take a break, and we'll hit the next slide when we come back. So let's do a 5-minute break. It's 8:54. We'll come back at, let's say, 9 o'clock sharp. I'll see you then. All right, welcome back from break. We're going to move on to the next slide here. They have a number of slides coming up here that talk about um, how the Turing test works, right? And, you know, they go through this whole process, and I'm not going to sit here and do these activities, real frankly, but I just kind of want to show you that the information is there. Also, if you look at the notes section of these slides, there's a link up to a Wikipedia article that goes into this pretty heavily. Um, and so they have, basically a player that's a man, a player that's a woman, and a player who is the interrogator, and it could be either gender. Um, so so basically, the man and the woman play the role of questioning the player C to figure out which of the two that person might be, right? And as you kind of get into it, um, how do you know, right, that you're talking to an AI or not? And here's kind of an interesting thought as we talk about this Turing test. Have you guys ever like gone on a chat bot on a website and thought you were actually talking to somebody, and then after a while you go, oh, this is a bot? Did you ever figure that out? Anybody ever have that experience? I've had that a couple of times. Especially if they ask you the same question, you just answered or something. So I think it's kind of interesting. um and the kind of interesting thing with this is, right, is I go back to these like real fundamental questions on that stuff. And this is what this unit's about, if you guys aren't figuring it out, is to ask these questions and not necessarily to answer them, but to get you thinking about it. And once again, the question really that arises is, can machines actually think, right? All right. So player A is trying to trick the interrogator into making the wrong decision. Player B tries to assist the interrogator in making the right decision. This is kind of how the Turing test works, right? So that's kind of the point. And then they replace player A with a computer, and then they replace player B by a man rather than a woman, and they continue to still, so like they're all trying to trick each other is really what's kind of going on here. And the whole point of the computer is to have enough wherewithal to figure out what's going on. And I think after a while, most humans figure out, like, even like, if I see like a fake video or a fake image, I'm like, that's not real, you know, that kind of thing. And how do you come to that conclusion? Really. Um, all right, so they kind of walk you through the process of it, and I'm not like so in on doing these activities, but I'm showing you that, like, if you had like a 4-hour version of this class, we might do that. And the point would be to simulate the Turing test with real people and see how it goes. And they have whole rules for it. So if you ever wanted to explore this, you could do it. There's really good videos online of people demonstrating that. But this is something you can also do in reality. And here's kind of that tie back to the chatbot thing I was talking about. Well, I've had experiences where I've been like, I don't know, like on, I don't know, some website, asking for help, and you get a chatbot and you think it's a person, you figure out it's not. And then you go to like the Gateway website, and when you hit the Gateway website, a little chat thing comes up. Is that a real person or not? Has anybody ever used it? Guess what? There's real people on the other side at Gateway. That there's actually a person in the office that comes up and, oh, hi. And it's not a chatbot, right? Maybe someday that person will be replaced. I don't know, but who knows? All right. Okay, so the point of this really ultimately, right, is it says the Turing test is a philosophical idea behind AI, and it really is very true. Like, as the deeper you get into this material, and might not completely resonate with you until you get to maybe the third course. I mean, that's where it really resonated, I thought. That we use all this stuff to try to trick the AI into thinking that it's not AI, and then convincing it that it's not, and then it really is, that kind of thing. All right, now we're going to start looking at how AI kind of evolved over time, and I think that this is pretty interesting because we have this thought, once again, in modern society, it's like, oh, Chat GPT just came out, just a couple years old, it's a new thing, right? And that's all you hear about now. It's AI data centers and chatbots, and how AI is taking everybody's job and destroying the future and whatever. But the truth is, people were working on this stuff for a long time. The concepts, the math, and the designing of it. It's not new at all. What's new is the extreme computing capability we're generating now, the processing, the bandwidth, the storage, all those things that are making it come to fruition. All right, so you see here, during the 50s and 70s, neural networks were being developed. 80s and 90s were about machine learning. And it's these two areas, real honestly, that still most of AI resides in those two spaces, those concepts. And now in the modern era, they're calling it present day, deep learning and cognitive systems that truly kind of simulate and generate content. Now, as a general school of thought, AI is really kind of like layers of technology, right? The thing that we think of as AI predominantly is machine learning. Inside of machine learning, a subset of it is what we call deep learning. And a subset of deep learning is the generative AI that we're using today, right? That, like ChatGPT. But it all stems, it's a subset of these greater technologies, and kind of interesting. So during this era, the 50s to the 70s, they started to work on this concept of a neural network, right? And the first conception was put together by these two people that we see on the screen here, right? And I'm not sure if I should be intimidated or scared or impressed by their looks, but it's always interesting to put a face with a name. It's like, oh, these are the guys that are responsible for all this, right? And if it wasn't them, it probably would have been something else. But they came up with the concept of the neural network in 1943. Like, holy cow, that's deep. That's a long time ago, folks. Not even I was born back then, Uh, and the goal was to create a computer-like system that could solve problems like a human brain. right? Not to program the computer to solve the problem, but to have the computer solve the problem, including the program, right? Machine learning kind of stems from that. And we went into the machine learning era when we got into the 80s, and that era really blossomed between 1980 and 2010, roughly. But machine learning is based on mathematics almost entirely. It uses rules that it generates based on information that it's given. And then, so in other words, like, remember I was using the football examples before, and like you watch a football game and they say, like, hey, 90% of the time when a team's leading by 20 points or more at halftime, they tend to win the game. Boy, that didn't come true. But generally speaking, I mean, they don't make that prediction out of nowhere. They use data that already exists to predict the outcome, right? So they have a little example. Given the history of home sales in the city, you could use machine learning to create a model that is able to predict how much different a home in the same city might sell for, right? And for example, if I wanted to know how much my house would sell for here in Milwaukee, all I'd have to do is look at the sales of other comparable properties in my neighborhood, right? And look at its condition, the style of the house, does it have parking, et cetera. What work does it need? And I could tell you what it's worth. And I'm not coming up with that out of thin air. That's based on information that exists. And that's really kind of the point here, is that we can teach a machine to learn or predict what's going to happen given what's already happened. Right. And that's machine learning. Right. They coined that term back in 1952. And the goal was to train a machine how to learn. How do you train it to learn? Well, you give it information that you know is real, right? There's also the subset of machine learning called deep learning. And this basically trains a computer to perform human-like tasks, such as recognizing speech, identifying an image, or making a prediction. Facial recognition is one of them. It's kind of interesting. Or ponder this as a thought, and this is an example I'll use a lot in these AI courses, is like, how does a kid, like an infant, right, that is just learning how to speak, know what's a dog and what's a cat? Think about it, right? They're both furry. They both have four legs. They have ears, nose, mouth, a tail, right? How do I know which one's a cat and which one's a dog? What makes a cat and a dog a dog? They're pretty similar, right? Yeah. So how does it do that? And then, heck, if it takes a while for a kid to learn, usually we use an example. We're like, look, here's a picture of a cat, and here's a picture of a dog. Dog's got its tongue hanging out, the cat's got whiskers, right? Et cetera. And so it learns by example, right? But what if it never encountered a cat or a dog before and nobody told it what it was? This is really kind of an interesting thought, right? So it says in 1943, Pitts and McCulloch created a computer model based on the neural networks of the human brain. And I think this is where we're going next, as they started kind of digging into this and how they developed this neural network. And then it got to this deep learning, which increased the neural network and made it more and more like a human brain. And then eventually we get to this subset of AI called generative AI. It just happened automatically. No, it was a whole process of building these neural models. Arguably, this is the most exciting area of AI. And mind you, once again, AI is not a new concept. People have been working on these things for a long time and using these tools for a long time. It's just that they exploded literally just a few years ago because of this technology, right? Generative AI, and this is the one that most people think of, right? Focuses on machines being creative and generating new content like art, music, or stories. Or imagine a computer program that can compose original music pieces or paint stunning artwork or create deep fakes or whatever. Here's kind of a weird little tidbit. Did you guys know, like, when you're listening to Spotify, and you're listening, you put in your, like, I don't know, Taylor Swift song or something like that, and then it gives you another song that kind of sounds like it, but it's not Taylor Swift. Did you know that Spotify is using AI to generate music that it owns and then gets you to listen to it and collects the royalties on the music that it created? Isn't that weird? And it's also a reason not to use Spotify, by the way. Not that I'm trying to slam them, but I think it's kind of interesting that there are websites out there I can go and just say, hey, create me a I don't know, a heavy metal emo death song, or come up with some topic, and it'll create the music and it'll be pretty darn good. That's kind of scary in a sense, but it's generating it from scratch, right? In principle. It says at the very core, the primary aim of Gen AI is to make things easier. Right. All right. Here's an example. And people that were in my database class this past semester, you guys remember we got to the point where we were like making some content. And then I was like, all right, I don't want to type like 20 entries into my database. So I just asked the Gen AI engine to make me, some insert statements or whatever. So I could just dump it in. And I think it was like dog data or something like that. And that's an example, right? And that is a thing that we call synthetic data, and it's totally a thing, right? And so if you can increase your productivity, heck, why not? If I had to type up lecture notes for you guys manually, I'd be doing it for hours every week. You know what I do is I let the AI generate it, and then I go through and just make sure it's good. Change a couple things, fix a couple things, update a few things, whatever. But it saves me hours and hours and hours, and that's okay. That's the world we're moving into, right? So Gen AI is a subset of AI, and it says now they want to compare what makes Gen AI different from conventional AI. And this is where you're going to start to see some of the differentiation here. All right, so Gen AI is made to produce new and unique content rather than merely processing or categorizing already existing data. Interesting, right? So the goal is it creates new content where conventional AI analyzes, processes, and classifies data. Okay, data analytics people, sounds like what we're doing in that class, but you're humans doing it, right? AI can do it too, right? So I can take an AI and say, clean my data, organize my data, process it, and make a chart. That's not creating new content, though. You see the difference? As opposed to me telling the AI, it's like, hey, can you create like 20 fictional dogs I can put in my database? That's generating it from scratch, right? That's the difference. Gen AI uses vast libraries of samples to train neural networks and other complicated structures to produce new content based on those patterns. Conventional AI employs fewer complex algorithms and training methods, but it's still considered AI, right? Says Gen AI output is fresh, innovative, and often unexpected. Have you guys ever asked an AI to do something? You're like, where did that come from? No? Yes? Maybe. Conventional AI produces more predictable output based on existing data. Gen AI benefits art, music, literature, gaming, and design. Okay, that sounds good. Conventional AI is used in banking, healthcare, image recognition, and language processing. It's kind of interesting. It's like more meat and potatoes, right? So Gen AI is like the artist, and conventional AI is like the one that gets the work done. And and both are valuable, right? I mean, they truly are. Why should you care? Well, because I'm taking a class in it, I guess, right? Um, this is interesting, right? So Gen AI can create brand new data that doesn't exist. That's my database example once again. Endless possibilities for research, testing, and exploration. Potentially, I guess. Allows for the discovery of new insights and innovations. Okay, so that's kind of an interesting one. Like, it might take me a long time, even using conventional AI, to solve a problem, but Gen AI, and here's kind of like a weird thought, right? I can ask one Gen AI engine to solve a problem, but I could also ask all the others to work on it at the same time and then compare their answers. and maybe I'll come up with something completely different that nobody even thought of. Like it might explore a pathway that my human brain would never even think to follow. That's kind of interesting, I think. Right. Reason two, better algorithms, right? So it enhances existing algorithms by creating training data for new neural networks. Okay. So, in other words, it can modify its own base algorithms to improve itself. Hmm. Now that sounds pretty heavy, right? And that's what's happening with a lot of the new AI engines is the deeper the models get. And by the way, when they look at generative AI models, they look at typically the number of parameters or data points, right? So, like those of you that have had Python programming, like when we write a function or create a class structure and we have parameters that we're throwing at something and it returns a value, like, okay, we created functions like, I don't know, 2, 3, 5 parameters. Generative AI models use trillions of parameters and process all of that. No wonder we need to build a whole data center for it, right? Did you guys ever hear the little thing? You know, they got a picture of a light bulb here that every time you run a chat GPT question, it burns as much energy as a 100-watt incandescent light bulb running all day long. And here I am using it 20 times a day. Oh, shoot, I just burned my whole electric bill in 10 minutes. You know, it's that kind of thing, right? But we don't even care, right? Um, but the algorithms, the neural networks, and the way that all of code is put together, when Gen AI can alter its own code, that's some really heavy stuff right there. And that's the era we're moving into. Um, it also helps us build better machines, right? Um, so we have this machine that's smart enough to help us build better machines, and we're kind of applying that to like thinking of mechanical devices, but yeah, it is applied there as well, but it's also applied to other tasks. So like if I have a production line going and you know, and interestingly, the last time I taught this course, I had somebody in the class that worked at a factory in Racine, and I think it was Case Corporation, and I apologize for not remembering. It was either Case or SC Johnson or something like that, and they have like some sort of a AI computer vision engine at the end of their production line that looks at like a thing that was just made, and it takes a picture of it, and it can tell if the tolerances are off just with that device. And if it's bad, it rejects it and throws it into the scrap pile rather than paying a human to do it, pull out a caliper and measure every single one. Right. And then that piece can then be used to build a better machine that does that task even better. You know, so that's kind of where they're going with this. But there's this automation aspect of it. Um, but it's also like optimizing things and optimization is kind of one of those words that we use a lot in this field, by the way. All right. So this is now that we've observed AI over time. Let's see how it influences our day-to-day lives. All right. Very exciting. All right. So here's some things that AI is actively used for in society today. So image recognition is one of them. Now, most of us are not walking around with like Google glasses or didn't Apple make like some for a while, but they gave up on them pretty quickly. I think Google gave up on theirs pretty quickly too. But the fact that I can take images and feed them to an AI, and the AI can tell me that's a cat, that's a dog, that's an apple, that's an orange, that's a house. And I want you to equate that back to human once again. Like, how did you learn those things? Did you just like come out of the womb and you knew what a cat and dog was? Or did you have to learn it? And then after you learned it, well, then I can figure out, well, that's just not any old cat. That's a Maine Coon cat with, and it's a polydactyl and it's a tabby and you know that kind of thing. And you start to classify it even more and more. It's a long hair, it's a short hair, it's you know, whatever. Natural language processing, and this is really kind of interesting. Like when I'm speaking a word, like I just used Google as an example before, and my phone says, "Okay, what's the weather tomorrow?" or whatever it's understanding some of those words and then triggering the correct search. It's not just converting it to text, but is it understanding it? Okay, well, the language is being processed, right? But when, okay, maybe it's being processed or not, but if I go to ChatGPT and say, hey, write me a term paper about Alan Turing and the Enigma machine, that kind of thing, it's understanding me and then it's generating content that's pretty interesting. Video classification. So we can actually not only feed images to AIs, but we can use videos as a feed as well and have it analyze those. Data analytics people, tabular and time series data applications, right? So we can have AI process that data for us, and we are moving into that era very, very quickly. So that's going to be one of the biggest revolutions in that area. Recommendation systems. Okay. I go to Amazon, I buy, I don't know, throw something. Okay, I bought a furnace part on Amazon a couple weeks ago, and then now I go into Amazon and it shows me other furnace parts. you know, like my furnace is going to keep breaking, or the Facebook example I used before, where I look at the marketplace for, I don't know, to buy a guitar, right? And then it's like, oh, you were looking at Gibson Les Pauls, so why don't we show you some more Gibson Les Pauls? You seem to like Gibson Les Pauls. I won't show those Fenders to you because obviously you're a Gibson guy, not a Fender guy, that kind of thing. Yeah, and that's very, very normal. And then speech to text, and that was the example I gave before. That's a pretty big one, and it can go both directions too. And I think one of the really impressive things is when you guys look at that one video I have in Unit 1, that's like a short video that was created by Google Notebook LM, right? And how convincing the human voice is on that. Like, it almost sounds like it has a personality. I'm impressed. I have to tell you very, very much. So not just our voice to text, but their text to voice is happening. So generative AI use cases, so visual content, like stuff you can do with images, enhance video prediction, 3D shape generation, generating audio, right? Generating text, and of course for us IT geeks, right? Generating code. There's a whole new area of coding now, and some people think it's already done and gone, called vibe coding, right? So instead of you like creating an application, starting from scratch and writing every line of code yourself, whatever language you're using, I just go to an AI and say, hey, can you create me a thing that does this, and that? And then generates all this code. Okay, can you fix that a little bit and then adjust it and make this part do that and that part do that? Fixes it. Then you keep making, and vibe coding is basically where you let the AI do all the work and you're just coaching it. And people do create full blown applications that way. Some people are monetizing them. I think it's fascinating. Yeah, it's a thing. And then I just saw an article recently that vibe coding is already dead, and that vibe coding leads to a lot of code errors that propagate, so there's like issues with it. And there's also an article that I read just recently that some coding companies are discouraging their workers from using AI too much because it's leading to unstable code, and it takes them so long to figure out how to use the AI that they could have just written the code themselves anyhow, that kind of thing. So there's the trade-offs, but code generation is huge. The general consensus out in the world is, when it comes to code generation, that the Anthropic Claude model is probably one of the better ones. It's also one of the more expensive ones and harder ones to use for free, right? I've had really good success with ChatGPT and a few other engines. The tool that Facebook just bought called Manus, which is a Chinese company, I've used that one pretty successfully with 1-2 sentence prompt to create an entire website. That's amazing. Still needed some tweaks and stuff, but holy cow, I'm blown away at some of the tools that are out there, folks. All right, that's like, okay, kind of conversationally, name some virtual assistants. Okay, well, here's what they're thinking. Alexa, right? So if you're on the Amazon platform, you got your Echo or whatever, or the Google Assistant, the one I was using before, um, Cortana, which is now called Copilot, right? That was what Microsoft used to call it, but now they're just calling it Copilot. And of course, Siri, which was one of the first ones that came out. Um, and yeah, I mean, they are truly pretty amazing. There is AI technology there. The AI technology is really more of conventional AI, where it's taking our voice, converting it to text, and then doing searches or pulling resources based on that. But there's still an intelligence there, or an automation, right? Another open quiz question: what's the primary goal of generative AI? Okay, their answer: automate routine tasks. Okay, perhaps generate new and original content. Yeah, write my term paper, please. Right, write my code for me. Thank you. Improve decision making processes. How many of you have ever asked ChatGPT, "What should I have for dinner tonight"? Have you ever tried that one? And a good AI engine is like, well, what kind of, do you have any dietary restrictions? Yeah, you know, so yeah, I'm gluten free, vegetarian, vegan, fat free, and no sugar, please. You know, it's like, well, here you can have nothing then, pretty much. Right? Or enhanced data analysis techniques, and yeah, that's a big one. And a lot, I think this is really kind of interesting. You're going to hear me use this term a lot, is like this concept of synthetic data, that a lot of times we speed up the training of AI models by using artificial data. Interesting. Why? Because data costs money to generate and collect, right? And sometimes you actually have to pay for it. And that's why they call it the new gold. AI machines mimic what kind of intelligence? Well, the answer to that one, of course, is humans or animals or others, right? Can we deny that animals have intelligence? Hmm. I know my dog's pretty smart. How do I know my dog's smart? Because I can walk her without a leash. This is very sincere. And I can tell her to wait, sit, turn left, turn right, go, whatever. And she'll do all those things pretty reliably. She even won't chase a squirrel if I tell her not to. But boy, somebody comes up with a treat, all that's off, right? Like you should have listened to none of it. All that intelligence is gone. But there is certainly some, like, she's understanding and putting something. So animals do have intelligence too. So I think that's pretty accurate. Um, all right. I'm not going to do this as an activity, but these are things you could think about in your head. Like, um, what's an example of image recognition? I would say, for example, do any of you unlock your phone with your face or your fingerprint for that matter, right? I am a huge fan of biometrics on a phone, big time. I hate typing my code. and my PC here that I'm using, which is a gaming laptop, doesn't have biometrics, but my MacBooks do. And man, it's just like finger on there, it's open. It's awesome, right? Speech to text, I think. Yeah, I think we've talked about most of these, so whatever. Let's move on. Let's hit this topic because this is a pretty important one, right? Um, there's this concept of like what we consider AI and this other concept that we call automation. And then we're going to look into like the different types of AI and its categories and notice artificial narrow intelligence, ANI, general intelligence, AGI, and super intelligence, right? And some people think we're verging on the AGI and the ASI. Some people think we've already achieved both, and I don't think so. But we are encroaching on it pretty quickly these days. And if you guys are wondering what that means, it's like Skynet coming real, basically. If you're wondering. Okay, so we're going to look at like all these different things here, how it differs, AI differs from not AI, and how AI works, and etc. Okay, let's talk about these acronyms now. So artificial narrow intelligence is oriented around very specific tasks. And I want you to look at the very bottom of that pyramid over there. They list at the bottom there in the ANI section Siri, Alexa, Cortana, Copilot, ChatGPT, whatever, those voice assistants, which are all based on machine learning, right? They have text to speech capabilities in both directions, and they're capable of completing some types of tasks, but they're very specific types of tasks, right? I don't ask Siri to like write a piece of music for me, or maybe it'll get to that point, but that's not what I use it for. It's like, Siri, can you like, give me directions to Walmart, is what I ask it to do. And I actually don't use Siri for that kind of stuff. I use whatever, doesn't matter. Ability of computers to perform specific tasks that humans perform with their brains. Like, okay, here's a list of 45 numbers. Can you please add those up for me really quickly? Thank you. So I don't have to type them into a calculator or a spreadsheet. And that the example they give is emails in the inbox getting sorted into spam and not spam, right? That's something that we can program. We can look at the clues basically. Like, hey, they're not on your contact list. There's a good chance it's spam, you know, or the to field is hidden. It's all BCC, right? It's probably spam, that kind of thing. Artificial general intelligence is what we think of when we think of cognitive abilities, right? So it says machines that can successfully perform any task that a human might do, like research a topic and write a 5-page term paper with citations and references, double spaced in 12-point Times Roman font. Thank you. Microsoft Word document, please. That kind of thing. And notice the example they give. The sci-fi example is Jarvis from Iron Man. All right, so if you guys watch the Marvel movies, which some of you know, can perform a wide range of tasks and exhibits human-like understanding and intelligence. And it says, as of May 2024, there are no real-world examples of true AGI, but research efforts by organizations like OpenAI tend to develop systems with general cognitive abilities like humans. So they're working on this problem. They're trying to create Jarvis. They're trying to create Star or Skynet or whatever. They're trying to make those kind of machines. But generally speaking, we can still figure out that they're not human. Then we have this thing, really the thing that we probably should be afraid of, which is the super intelligence, in which machines can outperform humans in any task that requires cognitive abilities. Right. All right. Granted, a computer is going to add numbers faster than a human can, but a human can add them. Right. Um, but if I ask like a computer to like generate a piece of music and write me some computer code and I don't know, build a machine that can like nuke humans and destroy them from the planet or whatever, you know. Yeah, I know it sounds kind of like crazy sci-fi kind of stuff, but identified by the ability to think, reason, solve problems, make decisions, make a plan, learn, and communicate on its own. Like, you guys came to school. Why? Why'd you come to school? My mom said I had to, right? Yeah, no, seriously, why do you come to school? And I'm hoping part of it is to learn. And why do you want to learn? Because that way I can get a degree, and that works with my plan because I want to get a good job. And then if I get a good job, I can buy a nice house, and then I can have a nice wife or a husband, and then I can retire and have some money. And I mean, there's decision making, planning, learning, communicating, all that stuff, right? That humans do intuitively, and in some cases we're told to do it. But really, like, if you want to be successful at school, it shouldn't be because somebody's telling you to do it. You should have figured out for yourself that it's the right path. And I'm just telling you guys, it is the right path. The path to prosperity, comfort, and a good future is through education. It really truly is. And I'm not just saying like going to school like we are, but like even if you were a carpenter, you got to learn how to be a carpenter before you start carpentering, or whatever the word is for that. Um, it's a process, right? Um, and it says here that it's still a speculative AI concept, um, but people are fearing, that some people think we already have the AGI, or we're really close. But if we get to this point where we have computers that can, outdo us, then we probably do want to like worry about the Battlestar Galactica scenario, right? And if you guys are familiar with that sci-fi series, it's got a very interesting premise. Um, so what do you think? Chat GPT and Siri, what do they fit under? ANI or AGI? Well, they already told us that Siri is ANI. Is Chat GPT AGI? It's getting really close. I think it's getting really, really, really close. I mean, yeah, I mean, if it fits under one, it's going to cover the one below it for sure, right? And I'm just responding to what's in the chat, right? Um, the latest Chat GPT models are pretty darn impressive, I think, the more I play with them. All right. So how AI differs from not AI. Machine independence can be considered a critical difference. All right. Independent machines are equipped with cognitive abilities that can solve problems independently. So, for example, if I program a robot with AI and I sent it down the road, all right, well, we have self-driving cars now, right? Um, so okay, so here's a classic scenario. You're driving down the road as a human being, right? And you're about to get in an accident. There's no way to avoid it. And your choice is A, I run over the old lady in the crosswalk, right? Or B, I smash into the tree and risk killing myself. What choice do you make? I'm not even asking you to answer, but these are the kind of things, right? Okay, so what does a self driving car do? Right. Well, it doesn't get into that scenario to begin with, probably. Yeah. You go for the tree. I don't know. I think most people try to save their own skin. And that's one of the things that humans do is they try to stay alive. Somebody that's got like some altruistic qualities to them. All right. How about this for a choice? Your choice is to run over the old lady or the kids. Well, that's an easy one. You just run over to the old lady. The kids need a chance at least. The old lady's already lived, right? I'm kidding, but these are the kind of things that right? All right, all right. So a lot of stuff is confused as being AI, and not really truly AI. And what they do here is kind of point out a couple things like online ad matching, an ad on Facebook or other online platforms for an item you just bought. Or this happens to me a lot. I talk about something in class, then I hop up on Amazon or a news site, and then there's an ad for it. How did that happen? Well, you got your phone, like I just by having Facebook Messenger on your phone, it's listening to your voice, it's listening to your words. And I said pizza, and all of a sudden I'm going to bring up a thing and it's going to suggest that I order a pizza tonight for dinner, right? Because that's a good option when you have a late night class for sure, right? Or car diagnostics, an app that shows you whether your car needs air in its tires or oil change. That's not AI. They just have a little algorithm that says you went 10,000 miles, change your oil, duh. Or a little sensor in the tire that says your pressure is low, right? Or little Internet of Things devices. What is IoT? Can somebody tell me what an IoT device is? Well, it says right there. It's basically ordinary things, a doorbell. I'll give you an example, like a Ring doorbell that's got cameras, microphones, and sensors and motion detectors built in. It's got a little computer built in. The computer connects to the internet. Somebody comes up to your door. It sends you a message on your phone. It's like, hey, somebody's at your door. You know, that's not AI. That's just good software, right? It's not the same thing. Right? Um, we're gonna hit. I'm trying to get to a few more slides here, and then we're gonna cap it. All right. So how AI differs from not AI, decision making. Decision is based on learnings from experience, right? Not AI. It's just basically good programming, right? It's just got a set of rules it follows. Right? Cognitive knowledge possesses comprehensive knowledge and cognitive computing capabilities, lacks the cognitive computing capabilities. It doesn't say anything about the comprehensive knowledge though. So you can take a not AI or well-written program and give it lots of information, like Siri, right? Or give it access to a lot of information. AI is often designed for tasks that a human is capable of, like create some computer code from scratch that solves problem X, right? Um, where a not AI is, you know, um, what would the self-driving car do in the kid and grandma scenario? It would probably try to stop as much as it could and not kill either one, is what it would try to do. Right. And first of all, it wouldn't go fast enough to get into the situation where it would even happen in the first place because it's paying attention. It's not looking at its phone while it's driving. Right. Yeah. Um, kind of, and a lot of these slides like are really kind of thought provoking, and that's really where the focus is as we get started in this course, folks. If you're not picking up on that, um, Gen AI allows for us to do a lot of different stuff that maybe we wouldn't have done before, right? And I'll just have you just ponder that on your own. It can help us be creative, inspire us to do different things, maybe give us different pathways that we're not considering, maybe do some menial tasks to free us up to think about higher level things. And I think that's kind of interesting as a thought. And that's how I want you to think about those Gen AI engines. They shouldn't be the end all be all of the work you're creating. Like if you're writing computer code or creating a document, you're the one driving it still, right? You're the one telling it where to go. If you think of it as a self-driving car. All right. Right. So the thing that's kind of interesting is they've been taking conventional AI systems or automation systems in a sense and starting to apply generative AI systems to work with the not AI systems and enhance them. That's really what they're talking about. Now, this product here that they're talking about, Adobe Firefly, which now I think has been absorbed into other products on the Adobe platform, was one of these platforms where, and I don't know if anybody here is like delves into this stuff, where you could, before it was really popular on ChatGPT, you can go in there and say, hey, create me a picture of a tiger in a jungle attacking or, something, like that. And it would be able to do that. Right. And now we're seeing that in a lot of other engines. But some of that capability was already there because, in art products, they often had stuff like, oh, I can get some like, I don't know, some stock image of a jungle. I can get a stock image of a tiger. I don't have to create it from scratch, right? And I can put those two things together. Here's a picture of a tiger crouching, and here's a picture of, whatever. But kind of combining the tools is really kind of what they're pointing out here. Graphic there. I mean, that kind of stuff's pretty impressive, right? And make a video out of it. I mean, holy cow, right? And it's not like you have like three options to choose from that are pre-configured. I could ask it to do it just about anything, and it would just kind of do it. Right? Crazy powerful software, by the way. And I don't know. I mean, if you guys have not played with the software, it's kind of hard to explain. And I do have access to it, but I don't want to spend that time right now. It's getting pretty late here. All right. We'll answer a couple of these questions and then we'll call it a night. It says, what qualities does the machine possess? This is kind of a weird question. What do you think? Moral values? Machine, that robot over there has got moral values? I don't think so. It's automation, right? Even the self-driving car that knows when to slam on the brakes, it's not because of moral values or experience-based learning or an emotional connection, right? That's what it's like there's a thing in your way, stop, right? That's just automation, right? Among the following, what are some applications in your everyday life which are powered by AI. Hmm. Motion light sensor? Nah. Electric guitar? Nah. You actually got to play that, right? Google Assistant? A little bit. There's a little bit of AI in there, right? Because it's converting your text to speech and recognizing images and whatever. Social media recommendations? Yeah, that there's a whole lot of AI going on in those social media platforms, especially the Facebook platform, big time, right? It is not accidental what friends they're requesting and what content they're showing you and what reels are popping up on your screen. None of that is accidental, right? Is it intelligent? That's a separate question. But have any of you tried the AI engine inside of those meta platforms, like on Instagram or Facebook? Anybody? Nobody, right? Consider this a recommendation to do so. And you know what? This is where I capped it last year, very strangely. And so I'm going to cap it in the same exact spot. And so as I close out this video, we are not meeting next week. The part 2 video is already pre-recorded in the video section of unit 1. So between now and January 26th, what I do ask you guys is watch the part 2 video, and that way I won't have to cover it during class time when we come back together. There is an assignment for unit 1. I don't know if it states it in the assignment, but you are free to use AI to help you with the task if you wish. And I'm going to probably tweak the language on it a little bit. And also for the quiz, I ask that you guys hold off on taking the quiz for a day or two until I make a couple of tweaks to it, because I'm still working on a couple of edits. Otherwise, let's call this a video, and the video will end here.